What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be taking a quick peek over here at the Bitcoin price chart, but primarily we're going to be focusing again over here on the altcoin market, which has been gaining some steam. For the last year and a half, we've been focusing on Wyckoff accumulation happening over here, whether it's Total 3, Total 2, or others, which are the various different altcoin market cap indexes. We've recognized the Wyckoff accumulation schematic. We noticed that we had all gotten into the sign of strength phase here, and now we've been seeing the breakout. If you caught the video that I put out earlier this week, we talked a lot about where Bitcoin was and how this exact moment in time really marked when the altcoin market got moving back in 2020. Simply by looking at these two charts. On the top, we have 2023. On the bottom, we have 2020. If you've watched any amount of YouTube videos here on this channel, of course, you've seen these comparisons happening in here with 2023 and 2020. But back in 2020, it was this particular moment in time where we actually saw that the altcoin market was able to leave its range and start truly shifting to the upside when Bitcoin was able to clear that level. What we know happened earlier this week is that we did actually clear through that level over here for Bitcoin. You saw a lot of fear, panic, worry happening over there. And altcoin participants, I showed this, and well, we can see now at this point, the altcoin market is clearing the range. The altcoin market is taking off. And this is a really interesting dynamic to pay attention to, because when we go back and we look at these things in the past and we study these things, we're going to look at these two right here and we're going to say, look, they're happening at the exact same time. But it's not until you live in the actual moment of day to day, what social media is like, that there become these brief moments in times where it's not really exactly on time. You can even see here, there's a divergence happening here between Bitcoin and the altcoin market. You can see Bitcoin's now pulling back and the altcoin market is climbing, but our brains look at these two things and say they're happening at the exact same time, which is why I always argue, if you're not cheering for Bitcoin and if you don't own any Bitcoin, you should still be cheering for Bitcoin because it tends to lead the way. It tends to get things going. And while visually our brains do say these are happening simultaneously at the same time, they're actually not. It's almost like an optical illusion that all of this happening right in here in this big grind up right here, that exact same time frame is actually all right here, and the altcoin market is actually flat while that's happening. Hence these ranges that we keep looking at over here for these sign of strength phases. But obviously we've gotten our breakout in here. It's been exciting. As the video was titled, this was the triggering point on the Bitcoin price chart for the altcoin market to surge, and then in parentheses, right now. And sure enough, ever since that moment, there has been that divergence down on Bitcoin, and we have seen the altcoin market really start to get going. We've seen things like Ethereum continue to shoot their way out of there, out of that sign of strength phase here at the top of the accumulation range. Of course, we've seen Total 3 go as well. That is the altcoin market cap if we remove Ethereum. We're seeing things like Cardano leave their year plus, right? This is since September of 2022 being stuck in this range. Here you go. The big breakout is happening today for Cardano. Since that video was published, since that dynamic was hit and met like we saw back in 2020, and Bitcoin has pulled back for those several days, you could really just look all throughout the market, and lots of stuff is trying to push back up and leave this November range. Whether it's Algo, Aptos, AVAX, SHIB, Zcash, Doge, Hedera Hashgraph, Ethereum Classic, Polkadot. This list could go on. We could go through the list and you'll just find these everywhere, that most things, or at least half of them, are exceeding this November range right now. And like mentioned, for things over here with Cardano and this big breakout happening in here, this is the highest since September of 2022. And our brains can clearly see this. This is Wyckoff accumulation. This was spring. This is the escape of the top of the range, with the bottom of spring coming in there back in June of this year. So a good 6 months ago, as I posted back in July. And now, here we go. So it's a pretty exciting time. We see that over here on Ethereum too. We saw the different variations of Wyckoff accumulation end up happening in here, whether we had the last point of support, which is more of a boring kind of version like you saw over here on Ethereum, or if it was that more aggressive spring phase where it just slams back down into the lows, which, as we know, we have accumulation schematic number 1, which is the spring phase, and we have schematic number 2, which is the last point of support. And it's very, very difficult. And I mentioned this really all year long. And like I mentioned over here in this thread that was posted back in July, showing the accumulation schematics throughout the entire market. Here in this thread, we talk about the spring phase designed to shake retail out. It involves a shakeout near the low, allowing large interest to mislead the public and induce retail traders to sell. How many retail traders were selling in July, August, and September, screaming for 12K, thinking that we were going lower, getting tricked by the market? But it's also very well known, like just mentioned, that we usually see two different endings to a trading range, either a last point of support or a spring. The last point of support is quite boring, sideways price action. The spring is aggressive. And like we said throughout the year, very difficult to figure out which one's going to have which. Are we going to have last point of support where it just creeps out here and then springs, or does it just shoot its way back up in here? And we actually ended up seeing variations of both of them throughout the whole market the whole time. Some of them only doing the last point of supports and some of them doing the springs. But either way, we're all reaching the same level at the same time, the sign of strength, and now escaping the sign of strength, all at the exact same time that we should be doing it over here based on what we've seen happen in this market before. And so we won't keep this video too long. We'll just really kind of talk about just the phase that we're in right now, typically in the sign of strength breakout phase of Wyckoff accumulation. Essentially what's happening here is we're leaving a 1.5 year long range for the market. It's a breakout, which means it's usually a pretty exciting time that's ahead of us right now. But then it does become this game of hot potato, because what does typically eventually occur is back testing back to the top of the range, depending what asset or index we're looking at or market cap we're looking at. That even things like Cardano, which could get exciting and get much higher, that eventually these things do come back, right? They'll come back and they'll slam back down into these ranges, into these sign of strength areas before they can then go. But right now we're in the breakout stuff, and we're in the point where it can get euphoric, it can get exciting, get thrilling. You can see big moves happen in a day. Like we're seeing 13%. Sometimes we see stuff way bigger than that. We see 40, 50, 60% happen in a day in moments like this. And right now we're just kind of living in it. We're just kind of like in the celebration of the goodbye 2023 and 2022 trading range. We are escaping. The next phase typically is a whole lot of excitement, the big breakout, woohoo, this is roaring. And then eventually we come back to back test these levels before then shifting up. And so keeping that in mind right now, for me in particular, I'm like totally thrilled to see it happen. I'm totally thrilled to see prices go up, but I don't think to myself, hey, like, this is going to continue straight line up forever. Like this is the escape of the range. In Wyckoff, this is sign of strength. This is escape. This is exciting. Typically, we get a big fat breakout, but then it's like a big aggressive pullback does eventually show up in here. And then it's like the next phase where we can all like say, all right, now let's like get really speculative and say, where's this thing going to end up going? But typically, these are how these things go in Wyckoff accumulation range breakouts. Like even one of the early ones that we saw happen in this thread from back in July, it was right. Bitcoin Cash was one of the first ones to go out of there. And even it has operated in that manner, right? It escapes, big fat escape, and then it pulls right back down to the peak of that trading range right over there. And, still undecided if this is going to have more further pullback, but you could see it actually does. This was our first one we saw happen in here. And that is super, super typical for a market to do that when a trading range does get left. That if you're stuck underneath something for 1.5 years and you finally break back above it, the market's typically going to come back and test it and make sure there's some support there, and then it can shoot its way out. But right now we're like in that game. Now it's going to become hot potato game where, it keeps going up and up and up and up. And that's exciting and that's thrilling. How big can these breakouts get? How aggressive are we right now? Right, I put this line right here, but I don't know if that line's going to be way up here. And then big, fat, aggressive pull back down. I have my levels with all my retracement levels, and that's for a different type of video. But this is more of just concept here. When you leave Wyckoff, you typically get a big, fat breakout, but then it's very, 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 very common to pull back here eventually. So these prices we're leaving from right now, we'll likely see them again one day in the future. But right here, right now, in this precise moment, I'm just enjoying it, man. Goodbye 2022. Goodbye 2023. Peace. It's nice to see us doing what we expected to happen in here. And I think there's probably still quite a bit more to go over the coming days and potentially weeks right now. So a great celebration, great moves happening in here. Like I talk about a lot, trying to stay 2 steps ahead, right? The whole thing being Wyckoff the whole time. It's been the thought for 6 months, right? At the time, like when you're, I always say this too, when you're 2 steps ahead, you get looked at like a dingus. If you're only 1 step ahead, you look like a genius. But if you're 2, people think you're absolutely mad. Back in July, posting all those Wyckoff threads and stuff, at that time, people thought you're mad, right? They're like, there's no way that's happening. We're totally doomy. And then finally we get way up in here. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I kind of get it. Now it's being like 2 steps ahead again. It's like, all right, so we're kind of like in that breakout. It's that really exciting time. But then there's likely going to be some big pullback after that. So while we all get real excited about these big moves and we watch the content creation change over there on Twitter and the sentiment change and the YouTube videos all change over there on saying, is this the real breakout? Are we going to absolute moon? It's just keeping in mind of like, what have we been doing? We've been doing this long Wyckoff. We're leaving the range. It's usually very exciting to leave the range, and prices can actually get quite high when you leave from a range. But it's typically not the moment where we just go surging into all-time highs. It's typically big retrace, then boom, big throwback, and then more consolidation, and then we can start kind of speculating, can this thing actually go into all-time highs? And that, this is really kind of my thought process happening in here of where we're at right now. We are escaping. Everyone doom posted at the bottoms, but not here. Now they're all on board, hopping on board at least. Then becomes their euphoria. Then they all get wrong-footed. Then they get wrong-footed again at the bottom. And then we go, right? That's just how it always goes, right? Always know that the general consensus of the crowd is wrong. And I try to portray that, and that's not the best thing for YouTube videos. Typically, if you want to make successful YouTube videos, you do try to go with the consensus of the crowd. That's why growth was very slow down in here. If you were bear posting, your channels did just great. But if you're, being optimistic and showing these bottoms, it was very difficult to get any type of growth happening in here. And that's totally fine. The channel has reached a milestone I never thought it would. I never imagined we'd get to 250,000 subscribers here on the channel. That's just insane in the first place. And it really is just, let's get it right. Screw appeasing the crowd. And so right now, this is what my thesis is of the market, coming off of having this be the thesis the entire time, and it still is playing out accordingly. And we're watching this market leave right now based on the things that we thought would happen over here. And longtime followers of the channel all know this is what we talk about. It's what I repeat every day. You guys get sick of it. But finally, we're actually living in the actual moment now of the sign of strength breakout happening. So it's an exciting time. Probably more excitement to come, I'm thinking. And then, when we get further along, that's where we'll start kind of being like, all right, we're in the retracements. Now it's time to kind of let's have some more serious discussions. But right now, hey, celebration, enjoy. It's a great time. There's no signs of this thing slowing down as of yet. So as we head into the weekend, let's go. So I'll leave you at that, and I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are enjoying what's going on here in the market. It's nice to see some strength returning, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with this. You guys can, of course, check out bcbacker.com. This is a course that I've put together with over 40 videos and over 11 hours of content, and absolutely go into these Wyckoff accumulation and distribution structures, talking about how they operate. There's a whole lot more in here teaching you how to set up your own charts and your own indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. Whether you are an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, I'm confident that you're going to learn something here. And I do try to explain this stuff in easy to understand ways, just like I do here on the YouTube channel. As you probably noticed here on this thread that I was showing from July 8th on Twitter, I did include a screenshot of a PDF that I also include in here. Many of these sections do have PDFs in them that you can download onto your computer and print them out for yourself. There also is a master file down here that has all of the PDFs in one. This is not a PowerPoint presentation course. This is very similar to my YouTube channel. Whether we're talking about Elliott wave theory or historical behavior of the cryptocurrency market, there should be something in here for everybody. It's $39 one time with no recurring fees and no subscriptions. One time, you have access to all the videos and the PDFs right here on bcbacker.com. I do also write a newsletter over here on Substack. This is subscription based. It's at blockchainbacker.substack.com. We talk about various different things over here in the newsletter. Most recently, we're kind of on like this thread of studying the altcoin market and how that dynamic changed in 2021 versus 2017 and finding those data points that mattered to beat out the market. In 2021, we only had 2 out of 10 altcoins go on massive runs compared to 2017, in which it was 9 out of 10. So we've really been diving into data to see if we could improve those odds based on any type of data that was available back then in 2018 through 2021. We have focused over here on developer data, talked about percentage drawdowns and the likelihoods of them going into all-time highs, doing case studies, going through all the percentages of the top 100 from 2018 to 2020, and then also providing you with the top 100 here in 2023 for not only the percentage drawdowns, but also showing you the resources where you can find that development data very easily for yourself. And then the most recent one talking about circulating supply and inflation rates and how those impacted likelihoods of going into all-time highs or their percentage increases. So this has been a little series that we've had over here on the last 3. You can check all of this out along with audio voice recordings that I record personally here as I do read and go through the charts here in the Substack. There are links down here in the description of this video that you're watching right here to bcbacker.com to access all those 40 videos and over 11 hours of content. And there's also a link right down in here to the Substack or the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, I want to wish you all an absolutely wonderful weekend. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.